Where is everybody? Someplace else.
Shimon, you have to speak up.
Okay, just remind, if I'm too low, remind me.
Okay, because Zev had to move a whole seat forward.
Okay, just remind me. I'll speak louder.
Okay, good. This volume was good.
Okay.
Just did.
Okay.
Where was it?
Mishnah Mem Gimel Amud Beis.
Right. Right, the Mishnah. With your help, we got to the Mishnah. Okay.
Bear witness here.
Right. We'll discuss this later, but we have to see when a woman wants to establish,
Louder.
when a woman wants to establish that she was divorced, she'll see she has to bring witnesses. Isha Sha'amra, a woman told her proxy, "Is Kabbalah Gita, you be my proxy to receive the get." And then what? Now he got the get, but now when she wants to get married, she has to bring two pairs of witnesses. Two that say that she appointed this third party, this proxy, to be the proxy. And two have to testify that they actually received the get from the husband to divorce the wife. However, when I said you have to have two, they don't have to be four distinct people. You can have, for example, one person is a member of both sets, and then two different people make up the second person in each set. So you said, yeah. So afilu shehem rishonim ben achronim, right? The same thing. Like even if the same two that were the original witnesses, the last witnesses, echad rishonim ben rishonim, ve'echad ben achronim, ve'echad mitzarfim. Or you could have two different people in each set and one person common to both sets. It all works. Itmar. Now we learned the following. This is a famous case, and we have to really work on it. What happens when there's this type of disagreement? The husband says, he says, I gave the get to a third party, okay, for no other reason than to hold on to it. I gave it as a deposit. But the third party contradicts him, and he says, Anila Gerushin. He says, no, I was appointed to be a proxy to receive the get for the woman. The get's in my hand because she's divorced. The husband says the get is in the hands of the third party as a deposit to be guarded. He says, no, I received the third party says, no, I received this on behalf of the woman. She's divorced. So what's the fight? Mineman, who's believed? That's the argument in the Gemara. Rav Huna Amar Bal Neman. Rav Huna says the husband is believed that it was only a deposit and the woman is not divorced. Rav Chisda Amar Shalish Neman. Rav Chisda says, no, the third parties believe and that what they received to get on behalf of the woman to divorce her, and the husband gave it to divorce her, and she's divorced. Rav Huna Amar Bal Neman. Why did Rav Huna say that the husbands believe and what? And she's not divorced. Now we're assuming that they live in the same place. They have easy physical proximity to each other. If he was really going to giving it to the third party on behalf to as a recipient for the wife, okay, he would have given it to her directly. There was no need for it. They live in the same town. Rav Chisda said, no, that doesn't matter. He's not, the husband is not believed, and the third party believed by Shlishtem, and the third party believed that she was divorced. Because the husband, by definition, when he put the get into the hand of the third party, he trusted him because his fate is going to be in the hands of the third party. Why? If the third party says that this is a deposit, it'll be a deposit. If the third party says I received this as a get, or if the third party wants to take it and give it to whatever it is, the third party give it to because he can mess him up, he can do what he wants. So the husband absolutely trusted by trusting the third party with the get, no matter what the truth was. Yeah. So the husband himself is telling me to believe the third party. So that's the machlokas of what? That's the machlokas of Rav Huna and Rav Chisda. Rav Huna says that the husband is believed. Husband is believed because if he was really divorced, the wife, he would have given it to her. Rav Chisda says the third party is believed because the husband himself trusted the third party.
Now,
so
if she produces witnesses.
Witnesses change everything. Change once once his witnesses, everything changes. Masiv Rav Abba says this point. He's gonna quote a famous brisa. You know that. In money law, not in other laws. In money law, we have a rule called a dos baldin. If a person admits that they owe money, the case is over. There's no witnesses, you don't need anything. If I admit that I owe you money, That's a court case. I owe you the money. I admit it. I owe you the money. It's over. You don't get to bring any proof. You don't need witness. You don't need anything. I can incriminate by monetary law. I can incriminate myself. So the basis says an interesting one. It's Hodas Baldin Kameya Edim Dome. The admission of a person who obligates himself in monetary law, it's the same. It's 100 notes. It's completely believable. That's what it means. Yeah, I'll just tell you an interesting point. It's one of the most beautiful things I ever saw in my life. 100 is it's just a way to exaggerate because you only need two witnesses. But in Yerushalayim, when I was much younger, so I don't know if you know, in Yemen was traditionally a Rambam territory. Yemen was completely Rambam, and you'll have met, if you met at my age, when I was younger, you met people from Taiman. They used to know the Rambam like we know the Siddur. You met normal people. They knew like you can say Ashrei by heart. They met Taimanim. The Rambam was like Ashrei. They knew the whole Rambam by heart. They were very poor. They had very few books. They knew the Rambam by heart, and they lived by the Rambam. And it was only about 200 years ago that, for the first time, Kabbalistic teaching started to enter, and there was a big fight in Taiman, and it split down the middle. And there were the people who remained straight Rambam people, and then there were the people who became they became dedicated to the Kabbalistic teachings. And to such a degree, I mean, there's a group. There was one group in Taiman utterly denied the authenticity of the Kabbalah. I think they're called the Dardarim. They were complete. I think it's the name. They were completely denied. In any case, the country split down the middle, and there were even two chief rabbis. There was a chief rabbi of the Rambam people and chief rabbi of the Kabbalah group. So when I was a kid and I moved to Eretz Yisrael, so there was a restaurant in Yerushalayim that even I could afford, thank God. And it was called the Maravad Aksami. It was called the Magic Carpet. And the mother and father was a beautiful family, mother and father and two young men. The mother and father were always in the back cooking, and the two young men were, so to speak, they were the public face of the restaurant. In any case, interestingly enough, they were descended from both chief rabbis. Now, that family, but their grandfathers were the two warring parties, and instead they married together, and they were descended from them. But in any case, the most beautiful thing, they had always their instead of the normal document that you would expect from the rabbi, they also had a rabbinic document, but they had a document from a famous Yemenite rabbi named Rav Kapach. Have you heard of Rav Kapach? Was famous. He made a modern translation of the Moreh Nevuchim on the Moreh Nevuchim. The guide to the Perplex wasn't written in Hebrew; it was written in Arabic. And it's always a problem. People like myself, for example, are totally dependent on the sensitivity of the translators. So in modern times, we have several new translations of the Rambam, and Rav Kapach was one of them. In any case, so he writes in his letter to his approbation for the kashrus of this restaurant. He says that this family, he says, Nemanim alai kemea mashgichim. This family is as believed to me like 100 kashrus supervisors. I don't know, 100 kashrus supervisors are not more believable to me than this righteous family. He says whatever they cook is kosher, you can eat it. That's how he wrote. Very beautiful. Okay, so in any case, so we say we learned in the following brisa: when a person admits to monetary obligation, it's like 100 witnesses. He's completely believed. The shalish, okay, but however, a third party. So, for example, one guy says, one guy says this money was put into the third party's hands in order to be given over to me. The other guy says, no, I just gave it as a deposit. The shalish neman mishneim. However, the third party is more believed than whoever is debating. Well, one guy saying this was theirs, this money was given to the third party as a deposit. The guy says, no, this party was given to the third party for me. Ketzad, okay, what's an example? Zelmer kach was zelmer kach. One litigant says that the third party has the money for this reason. The other one says the third party has this money for this reason. Now, shalish neman, the third party is believed. So it's a kasha to Rav. How can Rav tell me that the kasha to Rav Huna? How can Rav Huna tell me that the husband is believed more than the third party? The third party should be believed, okay? Because so we said he has strength, right? When it says Shani Mama, the Gemara says no, you can't compare them. Why? because the brisa, as we pointed out, was talking about money. Money law is different than other laws. Okay, the isib lemechila. When it comes to money, by definition, any person can give up his money. So when I deal with a third party, you have to be careful with this. If you do this, you have to keep it in mind. When you deal with a third party, you're essentially signing away your rights. Why? When I give something to a third party, I say he can decide. Why? Let's say it's really my money, and he's gonna and what he says takes it away from me. When I when I give it to him, I have given a tacit agreement that whatever he says, I will fulfill. So even if he says even if the money is mine, and he says it's not mine, since I can always what? I can always forego my ownership of my money. When I gave it to him originally, it's like I said, if you say it's not mine, it's not mine. You know what I'm saying? It's a very dangerous thing to do if you trust people, you better know them. If you trust people, we had in Israel was a famous problem, what's called Blanco. First, it wasn't so good. You know, people would send blancos in banks. You know, the guy would say, listen here, sign 10 papers for me with the blank papers. I'll fill in later. I'll fill in the contract later. It's very dangerous. People lost fortunes from doing it. You do a thing, but it was common, brother. It was a very common thing in the banks and all those papers. So, guys, trust me. Just sign. I'd have to run after you a minute. Sign 10 papers. Whenever I need to, I'll write the bank orders on top. You know, don't do it. Don't do that. But because if you do it, by definition, what you're saying, whatever you say, I back up. If you sign a blank paper, so whatever you say, I test it. You take away my money, I agree. So you're crazy. Don't do it. Okay. So therefore, what? So he says. So money. Why is it that the third party is believed over everybody in monetary laws? Because everybody who dealt with the third party, by definition, that's what I told you. They essentially they tacitly gave up their rights. Whatever you say, I will back up financially. But okay. But when it comes to Gittin, the fact that the husband is believed has nothing to do with saying that the third party, because when the husband put the get into the hand of the third party, he wasn't saying whatever you do, I accept. Okay, now it's true. Okay, it's true that Rav Huna is saying he did trust him. By the way, the only thing is like the Rav Huna is saying that he did trust him, but it's a different type of trust, as we'll see.
But the
Okay,
Gemara says
yeah,
believe.
yeah, right. Well, Tanya, okay, I question 1 second. How can you tell me that the law of a third being believed is only by money? We have another brisa that says clearly b'chein legitin. No, it said the same law applies not only by money but even by gittin. So you see that what? That if we have a brisa that tells me that even by getting the third parties believe what you said is not true. So and therefore what? So therefore I still have a kasha.
No, then it's a kasha.
Therefore I still have a kasha to Rav Huna. So the Gemara says what? Legite. He said no. He says you're making a mistake. Legite mama. Even though it said the word gittin, and we usually use the word gittin to talk about a woman's get. Really, gittin is a word for any paper. It's talking about normal papers. Gemara says, get out of here. There's another brisa that says, and it's true by what? By stars, which is the word for common monetary papers. So now, since one says what? Monetary papers, and one says gittin, obviously the one that said gittin means what? Women's gittin. Now watch the next part. This is very important. Gemara says, get out of here. Would they learn together? Now, this is I want to take a minute and explain. This is very important. We expect consistency in a given opinion. So, for example, in a given body of work, if we find the Mishnayos contradict each other, we raise a difficulty. A Mishnayos is one body of work; it shouldn't contradict itself. If Rabbi Meir speaks, if we find in one place where Meir says one way, in one place a different way, we raise a difficulty. Rabbi Meir shouldn't be contradicting himself. Yesterday, we asked the kasha. Rav said something in one place, and he contradicted himself in another place. But it's classic, and I have this all my life. Somebody says to you, how can you say what you said? Rabbi Goldman said the other way.
I don't agree.
So I say to you, no, that's what Rabbi Goldman said. He said, I said what I said. I have enough trouble being responsible for what I say. I'm going to make responsible for what other people say. So I'm not responsible. That's called in the Gemara, Gavra Agavra Karamis. Are you going to raise a difficulty from one person to another? I don't have to be in concert with what everybody says. If you find that I contradict myself, that's a difficulty. But if I contradict what somebody else said, that's nothing. Now, the same thing over here. The Gemara starts out by saying what? Since we have brises, the brises contradict, but we don't know that these brises are a single body of work. You understand? There are brises, a lot of brises were floating around. There's a lot of debate about what brises are. You know the word brise? What's brisa mean? Outside. So I'll tell you what I mean. So we know for sure the Brises were handed down as footnotes to the Mishnayos, okay? And they elaborate and explain lots of things that the Mishnah doesn't. Now, what some people say is like this: that the original Mishnayos was 600 orders, not six like we have, 600, a very unwieldy body of oral law. So Rebbe, when he boiled it down to six, what happened with everything else? So some people learn that the Brises are all really, rather than a new work, some people learn that the Brises are all old Mishnayos from the original 600, which is obviously was a much more elaborated body of work. They were held over as what as footnotes to the Mishnayos, to make it easier. That's one opinion, and because of that, you'll notice a very interesting thing. You'll see that when the Gemara quotes a Brisa, what does it usually say? Tanya, okay, or Tana Rabbana. So we always are more pants, but then you'll see sometimes it'll quote and it'll say Tani or Tani Allah. Which is like it's taught or was taught about it. So those ones we usually indicate what we call the Tosefta, an addendum. If you look at the back of your Masechtas, you'll find a work called the Tosefta. So it's like addendum, like an addendum. So some people learn that the Brises, the reason why the Brises are introduced in the past tense is because they're a long time ago. They were taught a long time ago. And the Toseftas are taught, so to speak, it was taught about it, or we teach because they were new, right? They were the new teachings. Those were the new teachings. That's the way. But the point over here, like this, but the Brises were for sure not. If you remember, well, you probably saw this. Remember, sometimes the Gemara will say, "Oh, that Brisa, it's Shabeshta, or it's Meshubash." What? Oh, that's a corrupt Brisa. We don't accept that Brisa. Or, if you probably remember, this is not from the Brises of Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Oshia. You remember that in the Gemara? Oh no, those are low budget Brises. I don't accept those Brises. We only take gold. What's it called? Yeah, gilt edge securities. But we only take Brises from Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Oshia. Why? Because the Brises, they were there. Who knows? The tradition was not as exact. And there were different collections. Here's the main point of Brises. So if I knew that these Brises were one collection, you'd have right to say, well, since it said here, Shtaros in one place and Gittin in another, so Gittin must be what? They're distinct from Shtaros. But how do you know? Maybe Gittin was from one collection, really, and Shtaros was from another collection, and there's no necessary consistency between the two Brises. Okay, so that's an important thing to remember, and that's why you'll see also often in a Gemara, you'll see like a long debate between two rabbis back and forth. Then finally they bring what's the coup de grace, they knock him out in the end. They bring a brisa. So why didn't you bring the brisa in the beginning? The answer is because brises are suspect. That's all. They're not our brises are not our best. They're not our best a shot always because they're always subject to challenge. Exactly. Okay, so that's a little word of that. But the main point is like this, and this is important to remember. Only things that are understood to be one body of work or one mind are subject to the challenge of inconsistency. Two people could say two different things. I don't care. It doesn't mean anything. This was one person. This was another person. Yeah. But my point is, though, again, what you have to know is so you have to always prove that something is saying. To give you another example, very important, with the art of argumentation, remember I told you, the Gemara doesn't discuss things that can be proven generally because it's boring. You understand? There's nothing to talk about. The whole point of the Gemara is to go to the edge of our knowledge. We go to the place where we don't know, and that's where the discussion of the Gemara begins. And at the end of what we do know, then starts the Gemara discussion. So, what I want to tell you about.
Tanya.
Important point. 1 second. Yeah, 1 second. Give me 1 second. It's a very important one to explain.
Right, do the brisa, and then you'll think.
1 second. I just want to let's see if I can just get this point. I want to explain something important.
It can't be that important if you don't know what it is.
Give me 1 second for this. If I can remember this point. You're not late. Don't worry. You're not late for anything.
It's not a question of late. It's a question of learning the Gemara.
Okay, I hope it'll come back to me. I want to explain an important point about this, about the consistency. I'll come back to it. But in order to raise difficulties, I have to have it. That's what I remember the point now. Here's the point. You see that I mentioned that the Gemara always discusses points that can't be proven. Why? Because if they can be proven, it's boring. You can go do it yourself. You don't need a discussion of a Gemara. So how does the Gemara work? The Gemara arranges claims pro and con about a given point, pro and con, and then ultimately with what is called nos the seichel, what is satisfactory to the mind, we see that the evidence is most heavily weighed on this side or on that side. That's how we make a decision. That's how the Talmud makes. That's how the Talmud makes a decision. Such an important point. I keep really losing it. Give me 1 second. I was going to explain something. So just give me 1 minute. I won't remember it. I'll go forward. So one of the key elements in bringing evidence is what's called a kushya. What is the value of a kushya? When you can't prove things, what do? You throw mud. You throw mud. What do? If I have an opinion, I can't prove that the opinion is wrong. So what do? I raise difficulties. What is that? I show, if what you said is true, something else really doesn't make sense. If what you said is true, a lot of strange results happen. Because in order to know the truth of something, I have to see what the ramifications are of a given thing. And based on the ramifications, I can decide if that thing is true or false. So I always bring kushiyas and I say, if what you're saying is true, something doesn't make sense. Now, in order to do that, though, to raise the difficulty, I always have to establish that the two places that I show make each other uncomfortable are the same circumstances. This is the point I wanted to bring home to you. It has to be the same weather, the same time, the same place, the same temperature, et cetera, et cetera. Why? How do we remove difficulty? Oh, no, that was talking in Babel. This is talking in Eretz Israel. That was talking in the winter season. This is talking in the summer season. So again, in order to use the power, the logic of what? Of saying that consistent things are inconsistent. You see what I'm saying? What does the Kushya do? Say, there's an inconsistency here. That casts a doubt on your opinion because it causes an inconsistency. But in order to show inconsistency, listen, this is the whole point I was trying to remember. In order to show inconsistency, I have to establish consistency. I want you to understand what I just said. I have to establish that two things should be consistent, and according to you, they're not. That's how so how do we get out of a kasha? Oh no, that was on the moon. That was in Eretz Israel. That was in Babel. That was in China. I say that these two things are not consistent. So don't say I caused an inconsistency. They're not consistent. They're never meant to be consistent. So you have to understand here when you're thinking, and that's why my Rebbe, may he rest in peace, often when we would make comparisons, he would shoot us down in a second. He would shoot us down. He said, don't make comparisons. Well, I said, tell me, you have a good idea, just say this, because either the ideal standard or so. You make a comparison, you've added a layer of vulnerability to yourself because you have to establish that your comparison is true. You understand? So it works, you understand? But if you want to think clearly, if you want to raise the difficulty of what somebody said, the burden is upon you to show that the two things should be consistent before you can raise the difficulty and say you've caused them to be inconsistent. I'm sorry, that's how I do it. It's very important. Actually, this is the foundation of all Gemara learning. This is how we come to, this is how we decide what is true and what is false. And this is how, again, we decide the halacha. You want to know how to live. This is how we do it. Okay, now, says the Gemara, Tanan, we learn. Okay, now, again, I'm going to ask you a kasha to Rav Chisda, who says, who says that the third party is believed. Tanan, we learn, if the woman said, a woman said to a guy, here, be my shaliach to receive the get. When she's going to want to be divorced, she's still going to need two edim. Okay, what is that? We learned from our Mishnah. Two of them have to say what? That in front of us, she appointed this guy to be the shaliach. And two of them are going to say what? That the guy that she appointed actually received the get. Vikara, and he tore it. We'll see in a minute, and he has to tear it up also because they used to. We'll see in a minute. They used to tear them up because of the goy. Now, Vamai. 1 second. Why does she need witnesses? If according to you, if you believe that a third party that received the get, who said that he was appointed to be a recipient, is believed. Okay, so why does she have to bring witnesses? He says she says I appointed him shaliach. He says I'm a shaliach and I received the get on her behalf. So why does she have to bring two witnesses that she appointed him, and why does she bring two witnesses that he received the get? There's Miko Nafi because the says you're right. He says Miko Nafi tuta yade. You're making a mistake. The case there is not where the get is in the hands of the third party. Okay. Yeah. Okay. It's not.
That's right.
No. The
to have it now.
Right. That's the point. Hey, had it been like you're saying, had it been in his hands, then we believe him. You're right. But the case here is what? The case here is what the get is not in his hand. Right. He no longer has it. We're talking he doesn't have it. Right. So what do you mean? Tina Amra. Okay. So he said, that's all very good. What you answered, where she said, Amra. Okay. So okay, I understand. I say, good. Okay. You're right. So that's good to explain to me why she has to bring witnesses, okay, that he received, that he was appointed, right? Because he doesn't have to get to say I was appointed to receive it, okay? Because if he had to get, he says he was appointed to receive it, he can always give it. Yes, he has the power. But over here, if he doesn't have it, okay. So I understand why she needs witnesses that she appointed him. But Kiba Lamali, but why does he need witnesses that he received the get and that he tore it up? That there's no need. The answer is Hamarav says, no way, I'll tell you why. Hamani Ulazi, this is according to Ulazi. You learned this before. We have one of the most famous arguments in Gittin. There are two things in general. Witnesses are only to get rid of liars. Why do we have witnesses if I borrow $100 from you, I owe you $100. If nobody saw it, it doesn't make a difference. If I took $100 from you, I owe $100. There's no witnesses, it means nothing. Why do we have witnesses? In case I'm going to lie later and say that I didn't take it. So you have witnesses to say that I did it. But there are two places in the Torah where the witnesses are not to stop liars. There are two places where witnesses are actually an integral part of the transaction. What is that? That is marriage and divorce. In marriage, the witnesses are not there to stop people from lying. The witnesses, they could stop people from lying, but that's not there. If there's no witnesses, there is no marriage. If I borrow $100 without witnesses, I owe the money. If I get married without witnesses, I'm not married. And the same thing by what? Same thing by divorce. The witnesses can stop liars in divorce, but if there's no witnesses by divorce, there's no divorce. Now, the only question is, we have a famous locus. We have famous locus. When it says that the husband writes the get, do we mean the signatures on the get or the writing of the get? You're saying, are the real, when those, what witnesses
are the
what witnesses are the ones that bring about the functioning of the get? Are they the witnesses who are signed on the get? That's what Mayor said. Or we said, what? No, the witnesses who see the get given to the hand of the woman. So the answer is here. The answer is you're right. Really, he's believed. It's not a problem. You're right. She doesn't bring witnesses that he received the get in order to. We could have believed him. You're right. Once we prove that he was a proxy, he's believed that he received the get in terms of what? In terms of what? That he's not a liar. So why do we need witnesses? We need witnesses because the get's not a get. That's why. Because we need witnesses because they're the batteries of the get. He's believed that he received the get, but we don't know that the get is the get without witnesses. That's the point. Why? Because this Bryson was according to our mission was according to the opinion of our Elazar that it's the witnesses who see the get handed over who actually empower the get. Yeah. Now, why is he tearing it up? What's that all about? Okay, Amar Yehuda, Amar Rabbi said the following. He says that was at a time when the Goyim didn't want to let us get divorced. Okay, so what they do, the second they would get the get, they would also tear it up so there wouldn't be any record of the get because the Goyim didn't like it. Now, okay, now we're going to bring what? We're going to bring a place where everyone in the world, there's no argument whatsoever, everyone agrees that that the third party is agreed that the get was given to him for divorce. Well, this is interesting. Amar Rabba, he says, Modu Rav Huna, even Rav Huna, who said that the third party is not usually believed, okay, that he was given it for get. Even Rav Huna agrees, the Amra Ihila, the Diamai Shlish. If the woman says that the third party said to me, she says the third party told me that my husband gave it to him for the purpose of divorcing me. Mehemna, she's believed, okay, she believes. So she says in the name of the third party that the third party got it. So then she's believed. So Mark says, 1 second, what are you talking about? How can you tell me that? How can you tell me that Rav Huna says the third party is not believed, and now the woman is believed when she reports what the third party said? She's strong. You didn't believe him. Now you're going to believe her because she says what he said. Okay. She says the shlish kuva leman. There's a place where the third party is not believed and she's believed on the basis of what he said. Ella, the answer is no. He says, here's what Robert was really saying. Here's a case where even Rav Huna agrees. If she said, "Kamoi didi," okay, okay. The point is like this: if the woman said, "Kamoi didi legushavi," the woman says, "If my husband gave the get to the third party in front of me," she says, "I saw my husband give it to the third party in front of me." Mehemna, and she's believed. Why? Migo di ibai amar, because she should have said the didaya. Okay. She could say what I got the get from my husband, okay, and the third party has it. Now, why is that? Because in general, we're going to see the woman is believed to say what I was divorced. Okay, we'll see. Let's bring again a case where everyone agrees that here's a very interesting case. The get was given for divorce, and she's still not divorced. Everyone agrees it was given for the purpose of divorce, and she's still not divorced. Yeah, she's still not divorced. Why? The husband says, I gave this get to the third party to divorce my wife. The third party says, I received it to divorce the woman. But she says, she says, the third party gave me the get, and I was divorced. And then it was lost, and I just don't have the get. Okay, so I can't prove that I was divorced. Rabbi Yochanan says in that case, all three of them say what? She's divorced. He says what? This is a matter of marital sexual prohibitions. Okay, any matter of prohibition between man and wife, man and woman are cannot be without two witnesses. Yeah, you have to witness it. Says, one second, I said, why shouldn't I believe it? I should believe the third party. Now what? That he got it for Gerushin and he gave it to the woman. Okay. Says, you're right, but you can't. Why? Because he doesn't have the get. Had the get bit in his hand, he would have been believed, at least according to somebody. But since the get's in her hand, he doesn't have the strength to say it's mine, I can give it to her if I want. Okay. So therefore what? He loses his belief. I laminate a ball. Maybe, but believe the husband that he gave it to the third party, to divorce the woman, the third party gave it to her. Because we have said that Rabbi Yochanan, whenever a husband says, I divorced my wife, okay, he's believed. He says, the Gemara says, no, me kamer gerashi. He didn't say what? I divorced my wife. He said, what? I gave it to the third party. That's not the same thing. He can never be sure. When he says, I myself gave a get to my wife, we can believe him. But when he says he gave it to the third party, he doesn't know the third party gave it to his wife. Now, this is a very important thing. I have a lema, but let me ask you, Kasha. Why don't you follow the famous principle? We have chazaka, shliach, shichusa. We have a general rule that our assumption is that whenever you make a proxy, the proxy did his job. Now, and we have a famous case. It's a sad case and a happy case, and I'll tell you an interesting point. Okay, Damar Yitzchak. Yitzchak says, if a guy says to a proxy, he says, listen, go find, he doesn't tell him who, he just goes, look, I got to get married. Just go out, find a girl, and marry me to her. You just get me married and come back later, tell me who the girl. But the shliach dies, and we never get to hear who he married. We don't know if he married him to somebody, and if he did or not, and if he did, we don't know who it is. What's this also about? This poor guy who sent him, he is forbidden to marry anybody ever again. Why is that? Because every woman in the world might be the mother, the daughter, the sister of the girl he's married to. Chazak, huh? Yeah, but I'm saying it's good enough. It's good enough. That's all he did. Kiddush. He's forbidden. So okay. Why? Why is that? Chazaka shliach oseh because we have a chazaka that the shliach does his job. When I finish the page, I'm going to tell you something beautiful. If you have a minute, okay, you can be extracurricular. Okay, but here's the point. Okay, so since we have a rule that a shliach does it. So what? As long as the husband says, "I gave it to the shliach to get to my wife," so why don't you apply the famous chazaka, the famous status quo? We assume that a shliach did his job. When says you're making a big mistake, a big error. These two things are not consistent. Like I told you, these cases are not comparable. When we said that we don't let this guy marry anybody because we follow the status quo, that he did his job and he's married to somebody we don't know who. When is that? Hani milul chumra. That's to be strict. You're right. We don't have a chazaka that it's absolutely true that it's a status quo. It's a status quo in the sense that we have to be stringent and assume that it happened, even though we don't know. Okay, avalakula, but over here you want to apply this chazaka to be lenient and let the woman remarry. No, we don't do that. We never there are such chazakas. There's a chazaka lakula, but this one is not. Okay, but in the same case, everybody agreed. The husband says she's divorced. The third party said she said she's divorced. Believe her. Okay, me the Rav Huna, like Rav Huna told me, the Rav Huna taught me. Any woman who walks up and says, "Listen, my husband divorced me," we believe her. Why is that? This is a chazaka, even the cooler. That what we say that it says under no girl can face a guy and say a lie to his face that you divorced me. What he did, okay? Whereas Hani says, no, you're making a mistake. When do we use When do we use the chazaka? Because we say, look, if there's nobody to give her any backing, she would never have the chutzpah to out and out lie and say you divorced me. But ironically, Avol Heicha the Messiah, since there's two people here agreeing with her, namely what the husband and the third party, now she'll lie.
But
She'll have the chutzpah. Why? Well, one second. Why? Because when we say a person has the chutzpah, they don't have the strength to bold. She can face the guy and just lie. But her husband and the third party are supporting her. She doesn't have to be so bold. She doesn't have to be so strong. She feels comfortable. It's up to the people supporting her. So therefore what? So she will lie. And therefore, there is no chazaka that she's telling the truth. So now that's why we don't do it. Okay, now let's get this like this. You know that a father can marry off his daughter, not only when she's little, but even until she's 12 and a half. Even though at 12, she becomes in one respect, 12 and 2 years. She's 12 and a little bit of maturity. She's essentially grown up, but she's not quite grown up. She's not what we call a bulgaris, a matured girl. A matured girl starts to become a woman is really 6 months after her 12th birthday. So really, up until 12 and a half, the father can still marry her off. He has the rights now, and the father can still marry her off. And furthermore, for sure, let's say the father marries off a young girl, like we learned yesterday, the day before. If the husband wants a divorce, that's a Torah marriage, and who receives the get? The father. He's the boss. She's a little girl. But what happens between 12 and 12 and a half? It's a crazy situation. She's kind of grown, and the truth is, remember, listen, as you mentioned before, look, even when a father marries a girl at 12, let's say between 12 and 12 and a half, he's the boss. But that's only so long as she did Kiddushin. Nisun, once the marriage is consummated, she goes completely into the hands of the husband, and the father's dominion is over. So now we're going to have a strange case between 12 and 12 and a half. She only did Kiddushin, okay? She hasn't quite gone completely into the domain of the husband, but she's grown. What happens if she gets divorced now? Who receives the get? Her or the father? She's not a little kid anymore. So the Gemara says, Na'ar Murasa, so she's between 12 and 12 and a half, and she only had Kiddushin and not consummation of marriage. The first opinion holds what? The rabbi saw what? Either one. The father can take it or she can take it. Rav Yehuda said, he says, you cannot have two domains in one person. It's ridiculous. Either she's in charge of herself or he's in charge. It can't be both. It can't be both of them. It's impossible. Ella, but rather, the father alone can receive her get, and she still can't receive her get until either one, unless she was in a consummated marriage or she was after 12 and a half. Okay, furthermore, there's an interesting case. If a girl is let's say a minor girl, so is she old enough to receive gittin? No. Since it says by gittin, since it says that the husband has to send her out, she has to understand, that she doesn't. But you see, sometimes our children happen. Sometimes the parents move, and the kid keeps going back to the old house. Or sometimes even when a person is, let's say, emotionally disturbed, the family moves, and the kid keeps coming back and says, "It's my house. It's my house." No, we sold the house. The kid can't grasp and know that it's not their house anymore. So sometimes little children are like that. The husband sends her away, but she thinks, "No, she's still coming home. She's like a cat. She comes back. She's too young to understand."
That's why you call it cancel.
So what's the age? When can we know? How can we know that a girl is mature enough to receive a get that she really understands that she doesn't belong with the husband anymore? That it's over. Okay. So the answer is, so ironically, the rabbis give a very funny criterion. The measuring stick is not about that point. It's about a different point. The rabbis say what? Because any girl that doesn't know how to safeguard her get, the paper, which will safeguard the paper, she cannot get divorced, and even if the father receives the get, she's not, because the girl has to understand, even a minor girl. So when the father married off the girl daraisa, even though the minor girl is in the domain of the father and the father receives the get, if she can't grasp that she's not married anymore, then the get that the father receives is not a good get. Her marriage was good and her divorce is not good. She has to understand that she's not, that she has to, we have to know that she's mature enough. So how do we know? We're going to see what says. It's incredible point. It's a very dangerous point. What you call analyzing the psyche of a person is a very tough thing. A woman, we don't divorce a woman today against the will. We can't force a man to give a get. So you have sometimes the person, the man, unfortunately, is mentally disturbed. Mentally disturbed. So we're stuck. The guy can't give a get. So one time in Yerushalayim, the famous psychiatric hospital in Yerushalayim for years was called Ezra Nashim. That was the helping women. That was the famous psychiatric hospital in Yerushalayim. So one time there was a guy in Ezra Nashim, and he wasn't well, and the wife was suffering, and she couldn't get a divorce, because he wasn't competent. So they called Rabbi Auerbach or Shlomo Zalman Zitzal, the famous Rabbi Auerbach in Yerushalayim. They said, "Look, the guy seems to be lucid now. Maybe you want to value. Maybe you can get a get." So he comes there to the hospital. And he sits down with the guy, and they're talking here and there. And he says, the guy says, he said, look at your surroundings. Look at where you are. You're in the hospital all the time, and he says, it's hard for your wife. He says, what do you say? Maybe let's give her a get. What do you think? So the guy looks to Rabbi Auerbach. He says, Rabbi, he says, it's true. I'm in the hospital because I'm not well. He says, but I'm not always going to be sick. He says, the doctors are helping me. One day I'll be better. And then I'm going to need to be married. Rabbi Auerbach said, he's saying, quickly, let's get a sofa. Let's give a divorce. Know that the guy understood that he was mentally ill and that he needs to get better and get married. Rabbi Auerbach said, the guy's sane. He's sane enough to give it. He said, quickly, let's get a sofa and give again. He said, it's very bittersweet story. But the point is that to evaluate the psyche of a person is our thing. So that we need, this is a Doraisa problem over here. Here, this girl, if she doesn't have competence as a minor to understand that she doesn't belong in this house anymore, that the get that the father received is not a get. So how do we evaluate it? It's not a get. So what are we going to do? So we're gonna have to see. Now, says the Gemara, but Micah Mifla, we had an argument in the Mishnah. The rabbis held that the father or the girl can take the get, can receive the get between 12 and 12 and a half, so long as she wasn't consummated. But Rabbi Yehuda says nothing doing. You can't have two masters. The father gets it and not the girl. So what's the Gemara said? But Micah Mifla, what is exactly the argument about? Rabbanan Sabre Yoda Yitirta Zachile Rachmana says no. The Torah gave that we have a tremendous chiddush that there's an extra hand involved here. Since the Torah gave the father a right to receive a get. You're right. What's not usually common sense that you'd have two dominions of one person. This case, the Torah said it. The father has the rights there for the father and the girl. He says, no, you're making a mistake. You're right that the Torah made a special dispensation to the father, but it wasn't in addition to the woman. By definition, if the Torah gave it, it's by definition instead of, and this is a powerful argument, which we can discuss another time. We said, well, now any girl who can't guard her physical get, is not old enough to understand that she's divorced. So Tana Rabbana, we learned a minor girl who is competent enough to guard her get paper, miskareshes, she can be divorced when the father receives it. But if she doesn't know how to guard the paper, she's not divorced. That's the litmus test to know if she's old enough to understand that she's divorced.
You have to understand what it means.
She has to understand that she doesn't belong in this house anymore. You can't go. This is not your home anymore. Get out of here. Don't go back there. He's not your husband.
That's what Lishmar means.
Yeah, you mean Lishmar's Gita means we're gonna see what it means. What now we're gonna see. Let's 1 second. We said that any girl who can guard her get, she is not an imbecile, and she'll understand what it means that she shouldn't go home anymore, and not. What's considered that she knows how to guard her get? Now look at this. It's such an incredible thing. The psychology is incredible. A girl who what does it mean? That she guards her get and something else and some other object. My kamar, what does that mean to us? It's cryptic. What does that mean? This is what it means. Okay, any girl who guards something else because of the get, really what she guards her teddy bear. She lost the get, but she's guarding the teddy bear instead of the get. She's guarding a trumpet instead of the get. Okay, that's called that she understands. Oh, she understands she has to guard it. Everybody says, what are you talking about? He says, oh, she's an imbecile. That's not showing competency. She's guarding her teddy bear instead of the get. She's obsessive. That's all. That doesn't show competence. She has no difference between the get and the teddy bear. That's nothing. It's not competent. Ella, here's have to read it. Here's what it means. The opposite is she can tell the difference between the get and something else. And if you cannot fool her, then she understands. She's not obsessively holding on to the get. She understands the get is one thing and that's something else. Now, we're going to see a similar point, okay? Let's see, as far as a minor, understanding what's called competent. Okay, he says, if you give a kid a rock and he throws it away, understands it has no value. You give him a nut and he takes it, he understands that a nut has value and a stone doesn't. That kid is able to make a kinyan for himself on his own behalf. But even so, he cannot make a kinyan for other people. Okay, but if you lend him something and he understands well enough to return it when it's time, after an hour passes, so the first opinion holds then he can not only acquire for himself, he's old enough to acquire for other people, at least rabbinically. He says, Rabbi said, when I told this differentiation over the Shmuel, I said no. Achasi, no. So both cases have the same law. Whether it's the same law, telling you to a stone on a nut and telling and being able to return a borrowed object has the same law. Now the problem is what? My achasi. What do you mean they have the same law? I don't know. Do you mean they have the same law that he can acquire for somebody else, or has the same law that he can't acquire for someone else? They're both the same. He can acquire for himself, and he won't acquire for other people. He said, "Let me ask you a kasha." He says to Rav Chisda, he says, "Let me ask you a kasha to your principle." We learn, Kate. You know that even though a shared courtyard is a private domain, and the alleyway that connects the shared courtyards is also a private domain. So there's no reason I can't carry from the courtyard or from the house to the alleyway. They're all private domain, but they look public. Remember, it looks like because you meet people from other courtyards, etc. It looks like a meeting ground. So the same way, remember we learned yesterday that a courtyard looks like a public domain vis-a-vis the house. The alleyway looks like a public domain vis-a-vis the courtyard and vis-a-vis the house, even though they're all private domain. So what do we do? So the rabbi said you have to join as if all the courtyards live together in one alleyway. Okay. So how do we make a partnership, so to speak, to make a partnership between all the courtyards in the alleyway so everyone can do it? Okay, and a guy now what we usually do is here you collect food from everybody. Courtyard A donates food and courtyard B, etc., etc. We all collect money. We collect from everybody and we put it. But what if we don't have time? I want to get one guy who takes care of everybody. So what he can do is he says, you know what? I will donate on behalf of everybody. One guy says, I'll take care of everybody. And that's what rabbis do for their communities. And when you make Erev Tashilin, how's the rabbi make Erev Tashilin for his whole community? He gives the Erev to somebody on behalf of the whole town or his whole community. And now he donated on their behalf. But he has to, if he can't do it himself because he's his own domain. So he finds somebody else to give it to. So in the rabbi, for example, in Erev Yontif, he wants to make an Erev Tafshilin to cover the people in his community that forget. So he gives it to somebody else. But you have to give it to somebody that's not in your domain so they can acquire on behalf of everybody else in the city. Similarly, one guy wants to donate on behalf of everybody, but he can't because he's himself. How can he be them? So he has to find a way to give it to them even though they're not there. So the guy takes food, a barrel of produce for everybody, and then he says, Hari Zu He says, I'm giving this to everybody who shares this alleyway. And he causes an acquisition to everybody in all the courtyards. He can use his grown son and daughter who are not dependent on him for their living. So they're their own domain. Okay. Even even his Jewish manservant or maidservant, because he doesn't own them like he owns a non-Jewish slave. Okay. The Gemara says, 1 second. Hi, Shifra, 1 second. You told me you could use the maidservant. Edat stay showers if she's already old enough. She's 12 and 2 hairs. Okay. My Bayagabe, she can't be a maidservant. She goes free. A Jewish maidservant goes free the second she goes free. Allah must be the Lache stay. So it must be that there's a Jewish maidservant and she hasn't brought 2 hairs, and still the Katani, and we still said what that she's able to acquire on behalf of everybody else.
Right.
Aye. So how can it be? So yes, Kasha, how can you tell me what you told me that a minor cannot acquire on behalf of other people? I just showed you that a minor Jewish maidservant can. Okay, the guy says, no, Shani should do it. He says, no, you make a mistake. That's a special rule. We're particularly lenient because since the whole prohibition of carrying the alleyway is only rabbinic, the rabbis accepted a transfer of property that in other places is invalid because it's only a rabbinic law. Rav Chisda Ishik Bardan. So he says Rav Chanina Bardan. He says it was quiet. Okay, he didn't
Have an answer.
he should have challenged what they said, but he didn't. Okay, my remember what should have he said? He should have said, you're making a mistake. He says, that's not true. You can't tell me that the rabbis were lenient in the case of the alleyway. Why? Kol the Taka Rabbanan, because we have a rule, and that is Kol the Taka Rabbanan came to Raisa Taka. Every time the rabbis make an enactment, they always follow Torah rules. So therefore, what? Therefore, if even though the rabbi said that you need an Eruv for what? For the alleyway, and even though you don't, once they said you did, the acquisition has to follow the laws of Torah acquisition, and you have to have a proper one. So you should have said, therefore, it really proves that what? It's not true. The Gemara says, V'idach nu. And so what is Rabbi Chanina Bar Doin going to say? He says, no, he says, Ki Amrinan called the Takam Rabbi Raisa Takam. When do we see the rabbis follow the Torah law? Okay, in rabbinic matters. Milsa the Islay Torah. Okay, the Islay Ikam Torah. When the rabbis extend a Torah law, they say, "Oh, the Torah only obligated truma in this case, but we'll make it obligated more." There, they pattern since they extended a Torah law rabbinically, they pattern it after Torah law. Avol milsa the lesba ikam Torah, but anything that's completely rabbinic creation and doesn't start with the Torah, like the Shita B'Vus, they're not extending the Torah law. There, no, they don't have to follow it, and they can be lenient.
They made them lovely so they can make the condition.
Yeah, I have a special thing if everyone wants to leave, but I'll tell you something interesting. And I mentioned this in the Shabbos class a few months ago.